Hey everybody, this is a long time in coming, and I am honored to have the great senator from Oklahoma, Senator Lankford, on today. Senator Lankford, we are long overdue to do this, are we not?
We are long overdue to be able to have this conversation. It's good to see you again, my friend. Good to see you.
Yes. And I wanted to open up with an interesting question. You you get a lot of I kind of feel like you must be over the target. You get a lot of criticism. And I know a lot. I know politicians do get a lot of criticism. That's
Yeah.
part of the job. Um, but I know you as one of my favorite things about you, or maybe even my favorite thing about you, is you're a very solutions-oriented guy. You're looking to figure out how do we solve the problem,
Right.
and because of that, you get a lot of criticism from folks, from too hard line to too squishy, to this to that. How does that how do you as that's coming in, how does that impact you in any way?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I just recently wrote a book called Turnaround. In the book, one of the things that I've mentioned is the only thing you can be guaranteed of when you're elected to office is criticism. That's the one thing you can be guaranteed of when you run for office. I also remind people that we were elected to solve hard things. They're hard, and so they're controversial. It is easy for somebody in politics to talk about the problem because when you're talking about the problem, everyone nods their head and says, yes, that's a problem. Yes, that's a
Right.
problem. And everyone agrees and everyone cheers. But as soon as you start laying out solutions, your crowd just split because some people will think, no, this is a better solution than that solution. So most people just spend their time talking about the problem, never trying to solve the problem because solving problems creates some division among people. But just talking about the problem is easy. Everyone's united on that. So we were sent here to do hard things. When you have to do hard things, you have to make hard decisions on things and to be able to say, let's figure out how to solve this so that a decade from now, we're not still talking about the same hard thing. We're talking about the next hard thing.
So the latest one, and I'm going to just characterize this. You can tell me if I got it right or wrong. Is you're a neocon, warmonger, blah 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 blah. That was the since we're talking about the U.S. Israel alliance. Where did that stem from? What problem were you trying to solve that got you afoul of whoever that was?
Yeah, it's whoever it is this week on things. What's interesting is there is a huge split. And take Israel, for instance. Should the United States stand with Israel, or should the United States say that's Israel's problem? They can live or die on their own. That's really the perspective that some people have. I happen to believe we have allies, and then we stand with allies, and that things like NATO is the most successful military alliance that's ever existed in the history of the world.
Yeah.
So that I think is strong. When we're strong and we show we're strong, we actually can make peace. But when you're weak and you sit back and you watch the chaos and think it doesn't affect you, it does actually affect you. So is my stand, that's a strong stand for Israel, to say when Israel is attacked, we should stand with our ally Israel. I have people push back on me and say, gosh, we need to let the Middle East burn. That's not our problem. It is, quite frankly. We are connected. That's our friend. When someone attacks my friend, I'm not going to just say my friend can do it on their own. I'm going to stand with my friend.
How do you explain to people, Senator? Because I do think because we live in this big country and we don't really border other countries as you would in Europe or as you would in other most parts of the world,
Right.
we are uniquely insulated in that. I think it's like a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that America's insulated. The curse is that the only dynamics we understand are Mexico and Canada, and I'm not even sure that we always understand those dynamics, right? So how do you explain to your constituents the nature of what happens there impacts us here? How do you go about trying to do that?
Well, it depends on who they are and their own background. With some people, you don't have to explain it because they understand if they're a manufacturer, for instance, they're selling products internationally or they're buying bits and pieces of their product that they manufacture from other countries. If they're a manufacturer, they understand that this is a global marketplace. If they're a student of history, they understand that we've been connected to the rest of the world. When we wrote the Declaration of Independence, which we're about to celebrate 250 years of next year, one of the statements that was made in the Declaration of Independence when we were separating from good King George and saying we're on our own was that he was blocking our international trade. We were free traders before we were even a country. What was one of our complaints is, hey, you're isolating us from the rest of the world. We're not going to be isolated from the rest of the world. So it's deep in our DNA. So if you're a student of history, you understand it. If you're a manufacturer, you understand it. But quite frankly, if you're a consumer, you should also understand it. No matter what store you go to, you're going to pick up products that are purchased all around the world. So, for instance, when a war breaks out between Russia and Ukraine, how does that affect us in America? We'll ask a farmer and see the price of fertilizer that skyrocketed because a lot of the fertilizer was coming out of Ukraine, or ask somebody that does steel manufacturing because a lot of the pig iron came out of that area in Ukraine. So it's interesting just to be able to watch the prices of things as they move around. So it's our economy. It's also people. And I'm one of those folks that has a biblical worldview. I think that God created people in his image and that people have value and worth. And it's beneficial to us to be able to see people, no matter who they are and what country they're in, as a person of value and worth. And we should work towards peaceful relationships, whether it is Ethiopia, in the chaos that's happening there, or in Congo and Rwanda, in the long-going struggle that's actually happening there for a long time. I think we find diplomatic solutions to be able to help where we can. We're not in the war. We shouldn't be at a war in every place around the world. That's not our issue. But where we can make a difference, we should. We're the United States of America. We're the biggest, baddest country in the world. We should actually try to use our influence for good.
So let me ask you about that. As a senator and also as a former pastor, although I think being a pastor is like being a Marine. Once a pastor, always a pastor. I think is that fair? Okay.
That's fair.
And you mentioned having a biblical worldview. So Dr. Jeff Myers from Summit has very wisely said that when you're talking about Israel, you're not just talking about geopolitics, you're talking about theopolitics, because God, biblically, God is involved in what's going on in Israel. My first question to you is, there are those that say in this relation, so my question is there, first of all, is there a spiritual connection between America and Israel? And then I'll ask you my next question.
And there's a spiritual connection with anyone who connects with Israel.
Yeah.
Take just my biblical lens on this. I read Genesis 12 literally. Those who bless Israel are blessed. Those who curse Israel are cursed. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. That comes straight from that conversation with God and Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. So I do take that very seriously. And quite frankly, I've seen that across the world as well, and in our own geopolitical politics on it. So set that aside. Israel is also the only functioning democracy that's actually happening in the Middle East. Our economies are closely connected. Our values are closely connected. So I see alliances like with Israel, with the UK, with Australia, with key nations that are around the world that we have long-term lasting friendships with, that we're very interconnected with, both philosophically and our values. And then I look at even technology and science. We're working on solving cancer. My iPhone doesn't work without Israeli technology in it. I mean, there's so many software developments and so many things that happen out of Israel. Our economies are connected. Our science and research is connected. Our intelligence and military is connected based on what we're trying to do to combat global terrorism. There's a lot of interconnected points with Israel and our friendship and alliances there. And I think that needs to continue to grow.
Okay. Last theological question, if I might, Senator. So Senator Cruz was roundly criticized for making the statement you did, and one of the alluding to the Torah and Genesis and Abraham and the covenant there. And one of the arguments, and I've seen many of them, is that biblical Israel has nothing to do with modern Israel. How do you respond to that?
I still look at a Jewish nation and a Jewish people that is still has a direct line through that. So they want to look at boundaries and borders and nations and to say, set that aside. I don't. I look at this as the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, and I continue to be able to see that same exact line. So whether it is pre-1948 and I'm blessing a Jewish individual and still engaged in that friendship and that relationship, or whether it is a Jewish nation that is happening. I don't see a difference on that. And I go back to your statement on Ted Cruz was roundly criticized. I go back to my very first statement. When you're in politics, you get roundly criticized. Doesn't matter who you are, you get roundly criticized.
That's true. So you recently made a trip to the Middle East, and I wanted to actually have you walk us through that trip, the purpose, where you stopped, what you learned, all that kind of stuff. Do you want to begin it?
Sure.
Take us to the beginning? Yeah.
Yeah, I can walk through that. In fact, I was there just a couple of weeks before the violence broke out between Iran and Israel. So it was kind of those days leading up to that.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Baghdad meeting with the prime minister there. I was in Erbil meeting with the president of the Kurdish regional government. I was in Beirut meeting with the prime minister and the president there in Lebanon. I was in Amman meeting with the king in Jordan. And then I was in Jerusalem meeting with the prime minister there in Israel, meeting with the foreign minister, meeting with the economic ministry to be able to talk through where things are. So it was a very, very fast trip. There was a lot of movement there, but meeting with key leaders there in Iraq, in Jordan, in Lebanon, and in Israel to talk about, quite frankly, where we are in the region with Syria. That's kind of this undiscussed part of the region there that everyone knows is in chaos and a new government is trying to form, and what we can do in the region to be able to help there. And then obviously the terrorism that Israel has faced and the threats from Iran that everyone in the region sees, that ongoing war that's happened since 1948, quite frankly, but that's been going on for the last 2 years with Hamas and with Gaza, and trying to be able to find ways that we can get people to be able to help press on Hamas to be able to lay down arms and to be able to allow a restart in Gaza.
Did you, Senator, I don't know if you can say or not, but were you by yourself? Were you part of a delegation?
Yeah, I actually traveled with Angus King, who's an independent, who caucuses for the Democrats, but he's an independent from Maine, that he and I actually traveled together on that. We both serve on the Intelligence Committee, and so I had the opportunity to be able to just travel together and get a chance to be able to interact.
That's great. I mean, that's great to hear. So do we want to go can you give us first of all, an overview of why that particular, why those different stops, how it all kind of ties together?
Yeah, several things there. Obviously, we're working our way around Syria. In fact, at the end, we both went to Iraq, Lebanon, and Jordan. And then from Jordan, Senator King split off and went to Turkey. I split off and went to Israel. We're all just meeting with the different folks there. It's just time-based, just trying to be able to get to as many places as we could.
Yeah.
So the Syria issue is a big issue. Again, we're not trying to put troops into Syria, but trying to be able to get a feel for new government, new leadership, new direction. We've obviously seen how what happens in Syria does affect the rest of the region, and trying to determine direction there and who's cooperating together and where we're going. And then for me to be able to stop in again in Israel to be able to get status of where we are, what's happening next. But it's important to be able to just keep our finger on the pulse there. We still have troops on the ground in Iraq. We have troops on the ground in the Kurdish regional government area of northern Iraq as well. So maintaining those relationships and trying to figure out long-term where things are going. We are still fighting ISIS. It is amazing to me the number of people that don't know that ISIS is still on the ground in Syria and still working actively in the region to be able to establish their own dictatorship, quite frankly, that they're trying to be able to establish and impose on the rest of the world. So that is still an ongoing battle. And so we always want to be able to stay attentive to that. Then obviously in Israel, what's happening there with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with the Houthis and their launches from Yemen, with the Shia-backed militants that are still fighting against us and against Israel from Iraq. All those are significant.
And Senator, you have obviously, the Middle East is also the playground of a lot of powerful countries. So you've got China as a player, Russia as a player, Turkey is obviously increasingly becoming a player. First of all, with respect to Iraq, is Iraq getting, in your opinion, to a place where it can become independent, or is the influence of Iran so overwhelming still that they're, essentially Iran is still calling the shots?
Yeah, there's tremendous Iranian influence that's happening in Iraq still. They're trying to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. They want to have, quite frankly, more engagement with American companies. They want more investment coming in there. They want to be able to open up. In fact, when I was there, the Kurdish regional government was announcing a multi-billion-dollar deal with an American company, even while we were there. So there's a lot of interest in investment in that area. But I would also tell you, when I go to the prime minister's office and you drive down the street, there's a huge traffic circle right outside the prime minister's and office in the government building there. There's an enormous picture of Qasem Soleimani and a martyr photo in Baghdad. He was the Iranian head of the IRGC that President Trump actually took out in 2020. They're in Iraq. But there is still a giant martyr poster you can't help but see to an Iranian general in downtown Baghdad, Iraq. So yes, the Iranian influence is still incredibly strong in Iraq right now.
And Syria, Senator, just to help us understand, again, because to your point about ISIS, you're right, absolutely. Very few people know that that fight is still going on. In Syria, what are we to make of that? Were you able to meet with the new, sorry, you just mentioned it, but were you able to meet with the new president of Syria?
Did not. We did not go into
Okay.
Syria this particular trip. We went all the way around them and met with a lot of
Okay.
people, have met with him, but chose not to be able to try to go with.
What's your sense from what you heard? What's your sense of Syria?
There are a lot of folks.
Hopeful, skeptical?
It is hopeful. Everybody is hoping. There is a cautious optimism for the new government being formed there. There is also a sense of it's going to be complicated in Syria because Syria is not just one group. You've got Sunnis and Shias, you've got Alawites, you have Christians, you have Turks there, you have Kurds there. You have this very diverse people that are there in Syria that you have to be able to form a coalition to be able to get that working. And as folks would tell you often in the Middle East, forming that coalition is not easy to do in the Middle East. And with that many diverse perspectives that are there. And so there's a real work that has to happen with all those different groups to be able to say, let's try to be able to form a government and to be able to bring some stability there. The Turks are moving in, trying to say, we'll take over. We will help you get all this established. And the rest of the countries are basically saying, hey, let the Syrians actually run this, not the Turks actually trying to be able to establish their will on what's happening south of them. But all the leaders in the region are all telling people, turn towards Damascus, figure this out. We'll help assist in any way that we can in the process. But Damascus and the new leadership there, they need to be able to find a way to be able to establish those relationships. Interestingly enough, what's happening in Lebanon right now is a model of what could
That's
happen.
what I was just going to ask you. I was just going to go to Lebanon. Okay.
Yeah. Lebanon, I left the most hopeful that I've left Lebanon in a very long time.
Wow.
There's real work that's happening there. They have a new president. They have a new prime minister. The people of Lebanon seem to really be surrounding them and saying, okay, we have a hopeful sense that our government could be formed. As most people know, it's been years since there's been a functioning government in Lebanon. It's been very, very difficult there to form that government. But this government is pushing out Hezbollah. They're actively working to be able to disarm Hezbollah. In fact, they made very clear statements to me privately, and they've made the statements publicly that the Lebanese armed forces, that is the military of Lebanon, is not the only military that's there. There's also been the Hezbollah military that's been backed by Iran that's there. So you literally had two militaries in the same country, which those of us in America, we could never understand how there'd be two functioning militaries at odds with each other in the same country. That's been true in Lebanon for decades now. The Lebanese armed forces is rising up, disarming Hezbollah actively in all around the south. Much of Hezbollah has been pushed over to the Bekaa Valley bordering with Syria. And the Lebanese new leadership was saying, we're going to disarm Hezbollah in every area of the country. Second thing is, they were saying very clearly, we're going to disarm the Palestinian militias that are also functioning in these different camps in Lebanon that had been this destabilizing force as well, to say we're not going to allow that. In fact, the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, was actually in Lebanon just a week before I was there. They made public statements together to say, we need to disarm the Palestinian militias that are functioning to make sure that Lebanon and the Lebanese armed forces is the only military, and it represents all of Lebanon, not have these pockets and these militias that are all over the country. That's exceptionally significant, not to just say privately, but also publicly as well. So what Israel has done to dramatically diminish the capabilities of Hezbollah, the Lebanese armed forces, is stepping in and saying, we're going to finish the job here. They are fine with the political Hezbollah being there, but not the military aspects of Hezbollah being there.
So do you have hope, Senator? Because, Lebanon, of course, was the Paris of the Middle East before the Civil War. And I have had a lot of Lebanese friends over the years. I love them, wonderful people. And my heart always went out to them that, when are you going to get your country back? Because it was essentially occupied by Syria, as you know, for a long time. And then Hezbollah has been the other occupier, the other unwanted cancer in a country that just wants peace and to get along. So do you feel like that's a realistic possibility at this point?
It's not going to be done by Friday, but they're on a different path to be able to get there. That wasn't there 2 years ago. They're on a very different path right now. For instance, they are in the process of redoing their banking system. Their banking system was usually a pretty corrupt system that the international companies and entities just wouldn't invest there. Well, they've changed a lot of the rules for banking to open up, create more transparency. That is reopening Lebanon back to international investment. That's significant. Trying to be able to push out a occupying army that is Hezbollah funded by Iran out of their country. So Lebanon makes decisions about Lebanon, not Iran imposing its will onto Lebanon. That's incredibly significant. The chaos that's happening in Syria has distracted a lot of that and given Lebanon some breathing room to be able to say, how do we start reforming? Now, they've got a long way to go. There are years of inability to be able to make a decision, but they're on the new path to be able to do that. As simple as it sounds, they're now in control of their airport again. And that may sound like absurd to other people, but Hezbollah has been in control of the airport in Beirut for years. Well, now the country of Lebanon is now in control of their airports. That's incredibly significant to them to just reopen to commerce.
Wow. So kind of, I've been zooming in, I guess, before I finish my zoom in. Was there any one kind of other country that you went to where there was something surprising that you came across?
I think the biggest surprise of the trip was really what's happening in Lebanon. Obviously, I've had long-term good relationships with the king in Jordan. He continues to deal with a very complicated issue there as he is stuck between nations that are at odds with each other. But what's happening in Lebanon there and the work that is potential, and quite frankly, you've got American leaders like Morgan Ortagus, who's been very engaged there. The Lebanese leaders and the Israeli leaders all talked about the quality of her work and the tasks that she's actually doing there. It's literally been within the last 6 months of the work of the Trump administration and Morgan Ortagus, the Trump appointee on the ground to do that. That's made an incredible difference. There isn't even a recognized stable border between Israel and Lebanon. That's a land border that's established. They're working actively to be able to establish that. Those just basic things that are there, they're at the cusp of trying to be able to get resolved. That gives opportunities for a hopeful future for them.
I love Morgan. She's terrific. Just for the folks that don't know her specific role, can you explain Morgan's specific role?
She's been the envoy to that region from the Trump administration to be able to help the negotiations between Israel and Lebanon and to be the American voice there. There is also something there called the mechanism that has been established. That is an American general that is actually on the ground in Lebanon that is coordinating between the military of Israel and the military of Lebanon, providing an opportunity for the two of them to be able to talk to each other and to deconflict on the ceasefire between the two of them. That's also been exceptionally significant in what's happening. So what the Trump administration has established with the mechanism and with the special envoy has been very, very, very helpful in the process. Now, Morgan, it looks like she is shifting to the UN, but I'm hopeful that she will continue to be able to maintain that relationship with Lebanon because she's doing such good work there.
Okay, so if I could, Senator, just zooming out again, you've fascinating what you're sharing. From the U.S. Israel alliance perspective, you've got what you've learned on the trip, and then obviously the president is actively working to reshape the Middle East, to make it an area of commerce, not conflict.
Yeah.
And that's clearly the goal. That was clearly the goal on his trip. That's been the goal with disarming a nuclear Iran, because a nuclear Iran gets in the way of any of that taking place. And it's obvious that October 7th was Iran's attempt to break that up and to prevent that from happening. So now with this kind of new momentum, what do you think the goal should be here?
Well, obviously, the goal is normalization with the nations around Israel, with Israel, and free trade and opportunities to have that interaction. As you mentioned, commerce, not conflict in it, and that relationship in the region there. Much of this goes back to the Abraham Accords, and those Abraham Accords being signed at the White House between the UAE and Bahrain really got this started, where UAE and Bahrain recognized Israel's right to exist, open up commerce, open up trade, open up research together. That then invited in Morocco to be able to come and join, and is something that can spread. It's a formula that can spread around the region. I believe October the 7th of 2 years ago, that occurred because Iran and Hamas saw clearly that Abraham Accords was in the process of spreading even more, and the opportunity for Saudi Arabia to be able to join in normalization in other areas, that they were going to do whatever they could to make sure that doesn't happen. And so they sparked a war to try to create more division on this. What has happened since that time period is Hamas has been neutered, Hezbollah, the Houthis continue to be able to be pushed back, and obviously Israel pushing back directly on Iran. That's been the result of the pushback in that entire region. Long term, it is recognition of each country's right to exist. Long term, it is commerce between the two. And you say, we may disagree on things, but we still do trade, we still do interaction, we still engage. The United States and Vietnam don't agree on several policies and on several issues, but we have trade and ongoing relationships there. We're not at war with Vietnam as we were 50 years ago. That's not true where we are at this point. We have moved significantly beyond that. So take the United States and Vietnam from 50 years ago, put that in the Middle East and say, what could that look like 50 years from now with other nations that are at war with each other now? What could that look like in 50 years, and opportunities and relationships there? And I think that we've got an opportunity for that.
Senator, you come from the greatest state in all the 50 states.
By far.
That's my humble opinion. It's not even close. Anybody that wants to criticize you for that, good luck. And you have just wonderful elected leaders. Governor Stitt's an incredible guy. Your colleague, Senator Mullen, also amazing. So many people in the congressional delegation. When you guys get together and you're talking about Oklahoma and the link between Oklahoma and Israel, what do you think could be done to even deepen that even further? Because I know it's spiritually such a strong link. As I travel throughout the state of Oklahoma, people are so supportive.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a state full of God-fearing people, obviously. But what do you think might be possible from an Oklahoma level?
So I think the first thing we should do is do like a diplomatic tour of the Oklahoma City Thunder, going to Israel and have our championship team from the NBA travel over there and be able to engage it, because a lot of NBA fans that are in Israel. So,
of course, no, Jews love basketball. Yeah. There's no question about that. Yeah,
so that'd be a good connection point on it. And then we continue to be able to do a lot of trade and a lot of engagement. A lot of our companies actually go to Israel. A lot of Israeli companies come to Oklahoma. There's an open flow of commerce back and forth between the two countries. There's been quite a few of our leaders that have gone to Israel and spent time there. There are a lot of our pastors and churches that travel frequently to Israel. So there's a lot of ongoing relationship. There's not a time I'm in Israel whenever I visit that there's not also other Oklahomans that are there, just because of that love relationship between Israel and between Oklahoma, and just our close spiritual connection on that as well. And you're correct that a lot of our folks that are Christian churches have a deep, abiding love and affection for the Jewish people and for the nation of Israel. And that connection and that friendship is mutual, quite frankly. And so we want to continue to be able to stay engaged with that.
There's a lot of, I would imagine there's also, because Israel's a place that innovates on agriculture, and Oklahoma is a place that innovates on agriculture, something that people don't talk about, but guess what? The world's got to eat.
Yeah.
Are there links that you're aware of going back and forth, sharing knowledge in those different practice areas, especially in the ag area?
Yeah, there are actually. And just water resources, as you mentioned, is one of the biggest issues of that. What Israel has done for water, turning the desert into a garden, and the way they manage their water is a model for the rest of the world. And for Western Oklahoma, that is still water poor in that area, to know how to be able to manage water like Israel managed water with drip irrigation, the farming techniques, and all the different things that have been gained there. That model is a good model for us in Western Oklahoma. And I have actually actively shared that. And there's been some ongoing relationships on the research side to try to figure out what would work in our clay soils of Oklahoma and what's working in their sand there, and to be able to figure out how to be able to manage water better. So there are also a lot of things that we grow in our research at Oklahoma State University. We do a lot of our research on trying to be able to actually do certain plants and seeds that work better in drier climates on it, that we actually share back with Israel as well.
Yeah, I was talking to this is just a funny thing, Senator. I was talking to the Wallers. I don't know if you know, they're the guys that have that ministry in Israel where it's called Hayavel. They bring back farms and vineyards, and they were explaining to me that, and I should know this as somebody that's that's dabbled in farming and ranching, as you know. But they were explaining to me that when you measure the soil quality, a good score in America would be like 8 to 10 if you're measuring the I don't know how rich the soil is, how productive the soil could be. And they've done some measurements in Judea and Samaria area in particular, and they're getting numbers like 20.
Yeah.
Which it's just biblical, because they said they didn't even know those numbers were possible.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see the Bible come alive, kind of in both in Oklahoma and Israel, and the connections there.
Yeah, it's funny. There were years ago, I've been to Israel many, many times, and years ago I was in Golan, and in that region, and I was traveling with another Israeli, and he said, we're working on developing farms here and trying to be able to figure out what works here in Golan. And I'm looking around going, this looks like Oklahoma cattle country is what this looks like. You need to be raised beef in this area, because this area would be terrific for raising cattle and beef. So in each area, as you go through, and you've traveled Israel obviously extensively, you find the different orchards and groves and places where you've got great vineyards and orchards where you've got great areas to be able to grow there, and you found incredibly rich soil. I still go back to Mark Kelly in his comment years ago when he was astronaut Mark Kelly, not Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, and he would say, Israel's the only country I can see the boundaries of it from space, because you can look down in that desert region and see the actual green boundary of Israel.
Oh, wow.
Actually planted, and they've grown, and you can actually see the boundary of the country from space, and to be able to see the difference there in that one spot than it is everything else in the region.
It makes me think, Senator, of help me. I believe it was George Washington that his dream was every man under his own vine and fig tree. Am I correct? I believe that was President.
Yeah, that was one of President Washington's. That was one of his favorite verses that he would often quote, is that each person would live in peace under their own vine and their own fig tree. Yep.
And that is the great hope for Israel and for America, is that that's something that we could achieve together. Correct?
It is actually. Obviously, we're going to have issues and differences. The United States and China, we have stark differences right now, but there's not a sense of we want to go to war with China and solve this. It's okay, we have very frank, very stark differences with a communist nation and the values that they have and what they do and how they do it. So let's keep talking it out until we figure out a way to be able to say, you're over there, we're over here. We do differ on this. We're not going to try to impose our will on you. But we're not going to allow you to be able to run all over us as well. Israel is doing that in their region as well, to be able to say, I understand we have different values than you, but we've got to find a way to be able to actually live side by side. and to be able to work this out. Where we're over here, you're over there. We may do trade, we may do commerce. We're going to definitely do diplomacy, but you're not going to come kill us. That's not going to happen. And we find a way to be able to defend our own selves and our own values.
Senator Lankford, we're grateful for your time. We're grateful for also your willingness to take the criticism and as just as part of the job. So
Yep.
I guess it means you're over the target.
It is. It's part of the job. But I again remind people we're here to solve hard things. If we're going to just talk about stuff, okay, well, we can all just talk about it. But the same hard problems are going to be there. The reason you have a Congress, the reason you elect people to go do it is to say, go do a hard thing and then go back home. And I'm grateful to be able to be in this spot for this season, to be able to go work on hard things and try to solve as many as I can, because there are more hard things coming.
Yeah, that's right. So it's part of the job.
Yep.
Senator, thanks for your time. We really, really appreciate having you on the podcast today.
Yeah, good to get a chance to visit with you again.